Welcome to Mr. Variant, your definitive portal to explore the deepest theories, the most hidden stories, and the mysteries that Marvel tries to tell us between the lines. Here, reality is shaped by possibilities. And today, we're going to unravel every detail of the highly anticipated trailer for Spider-Man 4: A New Day. Get ready to discover what Marvel didn't say, but strongly hinted at. Let's go. When the title A New Day appeared on the screen, I immediately realized this film wouldn't be just another sequel. There's an emotional charge to that phrase, almost as if we were facing a fresh start, not only for Peter Parker, but for the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. And if you look closely, this new day may be darker than it seems. The trailer makes it clear that Spider-Man is more isolated than ever, forgotten by everyone, without his friends, without his emotional ties, without his identity revealed. This is the perfect foundation for a narrative where the character is forced to rebuild himself from scratch, and not lightly. On the contrary, this new Peter seems to carry a weight, a trauma, something that will only be revealed with time. But the most interesting thing is the trailer's tone. The soundtrack has melancholic tones, the color palette is darker, and even Spider-Man's costume looks dirtier and worn, as if reflecting the hero's own emotional state. All of this, my friends, points to a character evolution, but also for a deeper dive into your psyche. There is also the detail of the mysterious narration that opens the trailer. The unidentified voice talking about second chances, about that which was lost and cannot be restored. This may indicate that the multiverse will still directly interfere in Peter's life, perhaps even more than before. And here comes my first theory. Peter will be confronted with the consequences of Doctor Strange's spell. This could manifest itself through dimensional rifts, new variants emerging, or even unexpected magical consequences. It may not seem like it, but the trailer is full of mystical clues, especially in some nighttime scenes that resemble portals or subtle distortions in the air. Another thing that caught my attention was the absence of known secondary characters. MJ, Ned, Happy, everyone is out of the picture. This reinforces the idea that Marvel is making room for an arc focused solely on Peter Parker. A lone hero, perhaps more experienced, perhaps colder. And if we stop to think about it, this absence of familiar faces may have been intentional not only to avoid spoilers, but also to prepare us. This film will not be about romantic relationships, but rather about redemption, sacrifice, and definitive choices. The enemies that lurk in the shadows, Kraven, Oscorp, and the ruins of the multiverse. Now that the trailer's heavy atmosphere has subsided, it's time to delve deeper into what really threatens Spider-Man in this new chapter: the villains. And here, the game changes completely. You see, unlike the previous films where the villains came with almost a plate on their chest, like the Vulture, Mysterio, even the Green Goblin, in this trailer, everything is subtle, implicit. And that's brilliant, because the threat here isn't just physical, it's psychological, it is symbolic, and of course, it is strategically constructed to appear invisible until the last act. Let's start with who has been the hottest name in the rumor: Doc Kraven the Hunter. The trailer's scenes of Peter on rooftops being watched, the marks on the concrete, the feeling of being chased, everything indicates that Kraven is already on his trail. And not just any generic version of him. We're talking about a much more serious, realistic, almost tribal Kraven. Marvel may be taking a more brutal approach to the character, as it did with Namor in Wakanda Forever. This would give Kraven a much more menacing weight. And here comes an idea that gives me chills, just thinking about it. Kraven isn't hunting Spider-Man for glory or ego. He was hired. And by whom? The only answer that makes sense: Oscorp. Even though it doesn't appear directly in the trailer, Oscorp is there, between the lines, in the hidden graffiti, in the whispers of a system on the brink of corporate collapse. Did you notice the quick shot of a silver briefcase with a blurry logo? Look again. Many fans have enlarged the image and swear that it's the new Oscorp symbol. And if true, this could mean the return of Norman Osborn, or even more interesting, the introduction of a new Osborn, different from the one from Willem Dafoe's Goblin multiverse. Now, think about it. What if this new Osborn is trying to recreate Spider-Man? Like, not just as a superhero, but as technology. A controlled project? That would explain the interest in observing Peter, testing his physical and psychological limits. Kraven would just be the tip of the spear, testing the waters, and there's more. The trailer shows Peter entering some kind of abandoned building, where the technology seems far too advanced for ordinary New York. A green light reflects off his face, unexplained. This, to me, is a clear clue. Oscorp is operating in the shadows, and likely studying not only Spider-Man, but also the physics of the multiverse. The same one that was corrupted in the events of No Way Home. In other words, the enemy may now not only be physical, it may be multiversal. Imagine if Oscorp is trying to access Peter variants from other realities? Maybe even clone them? Or worse, create the perfect spider, based on DNA extracted from other versions. This leads us to a shocking possibility. The Introduction by Ben Reilly. Yes, the Scarlet Spider. A clone of Peter Parker, often with more aggression, more trauma, and fewer moral boundaries. What if that's the villain's plan? To recreate Peter, perfected, controllable, as a weapon, and returning to Kraven. Imagine if the hunter doesn't even know he's being manipulated. He believes he's on a sacred mission, but in reality, he's just a pawn in Oscorp's game. This would give the character incredible depth, making him more tragic than evil. Now, if you look closely at the trailer's cues, you'll also notice scenes where the sky appears distorted. This could just be a visual effect, or it could be a sign of dimensional instability. Something that hints at the symbiote, yes, the same one left in the post-credits scene of No Way Home. The symbiote's presence may be growing in the shadows. And so, we have another silent villain forming, Dark Spider-Man. Maybe not in this movie, but already being carefully planted. And speaking of the symbiote, if Oscorp is already studying Spider-Man's biology, it makes sense that they'd be interested in the alien organism as well. Perhaps Oscorp is trying to merge Peter's strength with the symbiote and create the ultimate venom? Yes, my friends. This trailer is telling us a lot, but silently. And that's where the real horror lies. The threats have not yet fully manifested themselves. Marvel is preparing us for something big. Much bigger than Kraven, a new romance, or even a simple street fight. The threat in A New Day is structural. It's infiltrated in corporations, in the government, in the fabric of reality. Peter is about to discover that the web he used to control is now entangling him, and there's no one to cut the threads. The Forgotten Spider, loneliness, mourning, and the reinterpretation of the hero. Do you know what the most brutal part of this trailer is? It's not the threat. It's not the villain in the shadows. It's not even the possibility of the multiverse collapsing again. It's the silence. The silence of the city. The silence around Peter Parker. The absence of any voice calling his name. Because this is no longer the Avenger Spider-Man. This is just an invisible kid in a mask. After Doctor Strange's spell erased Peter's existence from everyone's memory, the world kept turning. People moved on with their lives, but he didn't. And that's the weight that defines Spider-Man 4, A New Day. This Peter we see now, he has no one else. And I don't mean that symbolically, but literally. MJ doesn't remember who he is. Ned is no longer his partner in adventure. The Avengers don't even know they once fought alongside him. And the saddest thing, even Aunt May's grave bears the name of someone who was important only to him. No one knows what she meant anymore. And that, my friends, messes with anyone, including Spider-Man. Marvel is building what is perhaps the most mature version of the character since Tom Holland took over the role. The Peter Parker in this new film has no time for jokes or romance. He's surviving. Working nights, cleaning the streets as a vigilante, sewing his own uniform. He is now the real Spider-Man, the neighborhood hero. But not because you want to, because it needs. Because it's the only thing that still connects you to the world. And here comes one of the most exciting things about this new phase. Pain as an engine of transformation. Peter has lost everything. Family, friends, his identity. But still, he keeps fighting. And that's what separates great heroes from passengers. Peter never fought because he wants to be famous. He fights because he can't see injustice without reacting. And now, with no one by his side, no applause, no recognition, he's still there, in the shadows. Jumping from building to building, saving those in need, even if no one knows his name. And this narrative choice has a lot of meaning, because for the first time, Marvel is treating Spider-Man as urban symbol. A hero who inhabits alleys, walks rooftops, and mingles with the forgotten. Peter is now an echo, an urban legend like Batman is in Gotham. The difference is he has no fortune, no allies, just a patched uniform and a heart that insists on fighting. And there's more. This forced solitude makes Peter begin to develop something he always had in the comics, but was little explored in the movies: your intelligence. Did you notice that in the trailer, he builds a new tracker? That he seems to be studying an attack pattern? This is Peter Parker returning to his roots as a scientist, as the genius he is. And if the world no longer supports him, he'll build it himself. His own gadgets, his own weapons, his own network. And this can lead us to a powerful consequence. The birth of a Peter is cooler, more focused, more strategic. A Spider-Man less afraid of making mistakes because he's already lost everything. He no longer fights to keep it. He fights because it's what's left, and that makes him much more dangerous to the villains. There's a scene in the trailer that sums it all up. Peter, on top of a building, watching New York as the rain falls. No one speaks to him. No one appears. Just the distant hum of the living city. And he stands still, as if carrying the world on his shoulders. This image isn't aesthetic. It's the soul of the film. And if Marvel really wants to be bold, it could. Turn this phase into a trilogy within the Spider-Man saga. A redemption arc where Peter rebuilds his life step by step, but not by returning to the past. Instead, he creates a new future. More solid, more mature, more worthy of the legacy he carries. Because now, for the first time, Peter has no emotional shields. No one to comfort him. No familiar faces to save. He only has the city and his own conscience. It's him against everything. It's him against the system, against the villains, against loneliness, against the world. And you know what? It's in this scenario that the true hero is born. Easter eggs, hidden clues, and upcoming characters. While many watch the trailer only, for the impact of the main scenes, attentive fans know that the details are always hidden between the lines, or rather, in the dark corners of the frames. And in Spider-Man 4, A New Day, these details say more than words. In the very first scenes, we get quick glimpses of graffiti on the walls, strange symbols, and even a torn poster of a politician with anti-vigilante speech. This may indicate that New York is experiencing a period of total rejection of masked heroes. A city exhausted by cosmic battles and dimensional collapses, and now trying to return to normalcy, even while denying its own protectors. But among the visual signs, there are two elements that really attract attention. The constant presence of shadows with strange movement, and a dark glow that creeps across the structures in two specific shots from the trailer. It is not confirmed, but everything indicates that these details are references to the symbiote. And if that's true, we're seeing the first signs that the Sony's Venom universe may be getting closer to Holland's Spider-Man. Remember, in the post-credits, scene of No Way Home, a fragment of the symbiote was left behind in the MCU. And if this particle found Peter, perhaps it's just waiting for the right moment to manifest itself. probably when he's at his most vulnerable, and there's no more fragile phase than the one he's experiencing now. Another interesting point, the camera angles and urban architecture are very reminiscent of the visual style of the series Demolition Man Netflix's The Walking Dead, now canonized within the MCU. This is no coincidence. Rumors suggest that Matt Murdock, who previously appeared in No Way Home as a lawyer, will have a larger role in this sequel. Perhaps as a distant mentor. Perhaps as a vigilante with goals that clash with Peter's. And if Daredevil is in this game, Kingpin is also. Wilson Fisk has been confirmed in the MCU. And after the events of the Echo series, we know he's consolidating his position as a political and criminal force. In a scenario where the city rejects masked heroes, Fisk can promote himself as the solution, while simultaneously ruling the underworld. Peter would then be on a collision course with a network much larger than just common criminals. He'd be facing the system, power structures, corruption. And that brings us to one of the trailer's biggest mysteries. A barely noticeable scene where we see a youthful silhouette watching Peter from afar, with a backpack on his back and red sneakers. Could it just be a coincidence? Or are we facing the Miles Morales' first appearance in the MCU? The future of Spider-Man in the MCU and the legacy of Peter Parker. If there was ever a perfect time to redefine Spider-Man within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's now. Spider-Man 4. A New Day isn't just a sequel. It represents a narrative. Emotional and symbolic turning point for Peter Parker, and possibly for the entire future of the franchise. Everything being built in this new chapter sets the stage for the Peter that comic book fans have always recognized. The lonely, battered, but incredibly resilient Peter. And that, in itself, changes everything. Marvel may finally use this film as a basis for position Spider-Man as a key player in larger conflicts. And here we enter a critical point: Secret Wars. We know that this great saga is approaching as the new climax of the MCU. And if there is one character who plays an essential role in the Secret Wars comics, it is that character, Peter Parker. There, he comes into direct contact with the symbiote that would later become Venom. He clashes with cosmic figures. He makes devastating moral decisions. And he also interacts with alternate versions of himself. So, is the MCU planting the seeds for Peter to reunite with the other Spider-Men? Will Toby and Andrew still have a role to play? Maybe. But the focus now is not the multiverse. The focus is reconstruction. And this reconstruction is not just Peter's, but the public faith in the MCU. After turbulent periods and films that divided opinions, Marvel needs something emotional, real, intimate. And Peter Parker has always been that. He's always been the hero who bleeds, who suffers, who loses, but who keeps trying to save the world, even when the world forgets him. And this proposition, when well crafted, could yield one of the most impactful films of Marvel's new era. A film that doesn't rely on magical portals, broken multiverses, or galactic gods. A film that stands on its own, in the humanity of a young man alone with a hand-sewn mask, but that doesn't stop the ends from connecting. Remember, we have the symbiote lurking. We have Kingpin ruling the streets. We have Matt Murdock rising again as Daredevil. We have a divided city, fearful of vigilantes. And we have a young Peter Parker quietly struggling to be more than a myth, to be a symbol. And if we go further, we can even speculate that this Peter is being shaped to lead the next generation of heroes. A role that could be shared with characters like Sam Wilson's Captain America, Shuri as Black Panther, and who knows, Miles Morales himself. Because deep down, Peter Parker has always been this: a connection point between generations. He is the link between the ordinary and the extraordinary. The boy who makes mistakes but learns. The hero who falls but gets back up. The symbol that inspires. And that's why this new film carries so much weight. Not because of a new villain, not because of potential cameos, but because it marks the birth of the true Spider-Man. One who doesn't need to be remembered to do the right thing. One who carries the burden without waiting for applause. And when the world finally recognizes him again, it will be too late. Because Peter doesn't need the world to see him. He just needs to believe that he's still worth fighting for. This is Peter Parker's legacy. That's the spirit of a new day. This is the new beginning. Marvel loves to plant seeds before making revelations. If this silhouette really is Miles, the context is perfect. An ordinary neighborhood kid, inspired by rumors of a Spider-Man nobody knows, trying to figure out what's going on. This encounter between Peter and Miles could be the foundation for something much bigger. Future mantle passage, or at least the creation of an unprecedented partnership in cinema. And finally, there is an enigmatic image in the trailer that seems to go unnoticed. A spider mask thrown in an alley, burned on one edge. It's symbolic. It represents the end of an era, but also the birth of something new. That's the philosophy of the film. That's the spirit of A New Day. And that was our deep dive into Spider-Man 4. A New Day. A film that promises to be more than just a sequel, but rather the definitive rebirth of Peter Parker within the MCU. Marvel is betting on a new tone, a new phase, and Spider-Man could be the key to it all. If you enjoyed this style of analysis, don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell so you don't miss any new theories. And of course, we want to hear your opinion. What direction do you think Peter will take in this new beginning? Is Miles Morales already around? Will the symbiote appear? Leave your comments. The discussion here at Mr. Variant never stops. See you in the next video. And remember, while some people watch Marvel, we decipher it. Until next time, here at Mr. Variant.